Hi everyone, and good Wednesday afternoon, and welcome to GoLocal Live for Smart Health, GoLocal's new partnership with the Warrren Alpert Medical School at Brown University. And I'd like to welcome on my first guest, Dr. Ian Michelow, Associate Professor of Pediatrics at the Warrren Alpert School and Specialist in Pediatric Infectious Diseases at Hasbro here in Providence. Doctor, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks very much, Kate. I appreciate you giving me the time.
Well, of course, with what's happening around the country with measles right now, and your specialty and expertise in research in infectious diseases, have so many questions. The CDC reported this week in 2019, 839 cases confirmed in 23 states. Now, again, this is as of last week, the highest number since 1994. And in 2000, the United States said that measles were eradicated here in this country. But here we find ourselves in 2019 with outbreaks in pockets around the U.S. Are you surprised?
I'm disappointed that this has happened, and to some extent I'm not that surprised, just because we know that over the last few years, certainly in the last decade, there have been small pockets where outbreaks have occurred throughout the country, and certainly in the other parts of the world where we see fairly large outbreaks. So if you look back over the last few years, the numbers per year have actually been going up slightly, and this year has been a large increase. And I think we could have anticipated, and that's largely because I think there are pockets in the country where people are not having their children vaccinated, and that puts people at risk.
And can the U.S. get a hold on this, as you said, in these pockets where people, again, might not be vaccinating their children? How is the U.S. responding, the medical community responding, if we're seeing this as a result, as you said, of people who have had their children not vaccinated? Can the U.S. get a grasp on this?
Yes, I think the most important thing is to consider the important role that vaccines play. We know that vaccines are highly effective with a whole lot of infectious diseases, and particularly measles. If we can vaccinate sufficient people, we establish protection in that whole community. And if we can roll that out, and especially in communities where people are under-vaccinated, and we can achieve a certain proportion in that community, which is around over 90% of people, then we can protect everybody in that community. So yeah, the single best and most important thing to do is to make sure that sufficient people are immunized.
And what we're looking at right now in the U.S., again, these areas where there have been outbreaks, not here in Rhode Island, but we did see scares up in Boston as well. Could New England, could a Rhode Island face an outbreak?
So what's happened so far, if you look at the map, you said 23 states in the U.S. have been affected. And so far, Rhode Island has been spared. Massachusetts has seen some cases. Maine and Vermont haven't, but New Hampshire has. And I think, unfortunately, it's just a matter of time, because wherever people are at risk and are exposed, it just takes one case in the community to expose others, and anyone who's at risk can certainly get these infectious diseases, especially measles, because it's so highly infectious. So I think it is a risk, and I think we have to be vigilant, and I think the most important thing to be able to do is go out into those communities and make sure that people are getting vaccinated.
And because your specialty is pediatrics, what do you tell parents? Obviously, the importance of vaccination, but I'm sure they have questions. What do parents and families most want to hear?
They want to know that their children are safe, and that's what we're most concerned about, is that that measles is kept under control. I think, common sense hygiene, I don't think that there's any specific hygienic measures that are going to protect children. I think as long as parents are making sure that their children are safe because they're vaccinated, that's really the most important thing to do. And for the problem really is in cases where children, for whatever reason, cannot get the vaccine. If they're immunocompromised or have weakened immune systems or are allergic to components of the vaccine, or if they're too young, then they cannot get vaccinated. And that's really where the situation arises. And that's why it's so important for those particular children, and adults for that matter, are in a situation where everyone around them gets vaccinated. That includes parents, and that includes aunts and uncles and grandparents, and the rest of the community. So that's what I'd say that they need to do, is make sure that everybody around their child gets vaccinated.
You talk about, again, those extenuating circumstances for children who might not, for those reasons, be vaccinated. Let's talk about that age number. What is the age that children get vaccinated? And as we look at where these areas are, that there are measles outbreaks, should parents be taking extra precautions, again, if their child is of that young age that they have not yet gotten the vaccine?
That's a great question, because in fact, The recommendation is for children to be vaccinated routinely between 12 months and 15 months as their first vaccine, and then as a second follow-up vaccine between 4 to 6 years about, which is pre-school entry. So for children who've only had one vaccine, it is okay, and it can be recommended in certain circumstances by physicians, that a child gets a second dose, as long as it's 1 month after the first dose, and that is highly protective, above 93%. In fact, up to 97% if you've had 2 vaccine doses. So absolutely, and if there's an outbreak in a certain situation, or if people are traveling abroad, then that would be a consideration. If they're under 1 year of age, there is a possibility for families to be able to give a child between 6 months and 1 year of age their first dose of vaccine, which will protect them to some extent, and then they'll get their second dose after 1 year of age, and then they'll get a third dose as well. So there are definitely circumstances where we would recommend doses at an earlier age.
And what are those circumstances for those younger ones that you might advise, or families around the country be advised to get them at that younger age?
Right. So a big one is right now, because we are witnessing outbreaks of measles in different parts of the country. If a child is in a situation where they could be exposed to someone with measles, then you would want to get them maybe at an earlier point in time, or get the second vaccine a little earlier in their life. And the other big reason would be if they're traveling abroad, where there could be endemic measles or outbreaks, and that would be important to get an earlier vaccine.
And what do you think we'll see moving forward, Doctor, as you again talk about this being a result from families opting not to vaccinate children? We see a number, obviously, of religious exemptions between families who do it for religious purposes. We have seen also the anti-vaccination movement as well. What do you see moving forward with what we've seen with measles around the country?
Right.
Are we going to hit a level, as you said, with reactive and making sure that folks reach those vaccination levels, or could this have a potential to continue to grow?
Well, I think that this is reaching, really critical stages throughout the country, and I think that, physician groups and health authorities are trying to react to this in a way that's going to protect communities, and that is maybe changing laws in states. So we've noticed in some parts of the country, mandated vaccination is taking place. People are being excluded from some areas. And I think, unfortunately, it's got to that point because people are getting desperate to protect the community. I think what's going to happen going forward is a lot of campaigning to try and educate people about the value of getting vaccines, why vaccines are so important, and the really, overall safe track record of vaccines, particularly the measles vaccine. And so I think that's an important aspect of trying to curtail this outbreak throughout the country.
And here we are, 2019. I'm of a certain age. Is the vaccine that I got, as a child, have there been advancements from the scientific standpoint, or is it tinkering with it from year in, year out of what the basis is for a measles vaccine?
Well, the basis is, and a lot of the research was done decades ago, and they found that in the early 1960s, that the initial vaccine that was brought out was a little bit less effective. That was changed, and we've got a weakened live viral vaccine now, and that is highly effective. As I said before, if you have 2 vaccine doses, it's effective up to 97%. So yeah, things have changed. The vaccine we have now is highly effective, and there's research going on about how the virus spreads and how to monitor it, and diagnostic tests are improving all the time. So yes, there's definitely improvement and development in technologies, but essentially it comes down to the vaccine that we have that is highly effective. And to consider that there are people who but don't believe that there's a safe track record. Well, we know that there are some side effects, there are minor side effects, some redness at the sites, maybe some pain, some fever. There could be some joint pains and aches afterwards. But on the whole, it has a very safe track record. And there are extremely rare circumstances where there can be more serious side effects. But the question to ask is that safer than getting the wild type vaccine, the natural vaccine, which can have very serious effects, including, infection of the brain with swelling, very bad pneumonia, and even death. And there's one situation where people can have seizures for the rest of life, which can result in death. So I think on the balance of things, it's very important to understand how safe overall this is and how effective it is.
And so let's put on your professorial hat and being at the Warrren Alpert Medical School at Brown. How do you incorporate, what's happening around the country and with students, I'm sure, asking questions? I mean, this is a real life kind of a teaching opportunity. How do you discuss this with students? What is the dialogue at the school around what's currently taking place in the country?
So Fortunately, I am involved with teaching students, and so we've used this opportunity as a really important, teaching opportunity, teaching moment. So we've hosted discussions with medical students of all stages to discuss all sorts of things, including just what to look out for, because these students are learning just to recognize what measles looks like, because most physicians in the US haven't seen it, and so they could miss that. So it's important that, first of all, they recognize what the disease looks like. Secondly, they understand how to test for it. Thirdly, they understand how to prevent the spread of the disease. And so we also want to talk about the ethics, about who should get vaccinated, what are the reasons why people may not choose to get vaccinated, and what the implications are at the community level. So we've had a lot of these discussions just last week, in fact. So we are raising awareness and educating students, and they've been extremely receptive up to this point.
You raise an interesting point, again, having this sort of cohort of young professionals, again, not having seen measles before. Do you think the U.S. might be a little hesitant to say that measles are eradicated in the future after, again, having seen what we know now and what we're seeing since that 2000 announcement that they made?
I think exactly that point speaks to the fact that we're living in this very highly connected world, and it just takes one plane flight to bring an infectious disease from one continent to another continent. And the reality is that measles, as we know, was not eradicated in other parts of the world. So even though they had eliminated in the US at that point, we've seen time and time again these outbreaks. And so unfortunately, that did not stand up to the test of time. And so we're hoping that with campaigns, and we can spread the word and get the vaccines out, that we will be able to eliminate it. But there has to be a global effort, and I think that's where international organizations like the WHO comes into being to try and eradicate this throughout the world. And we are making huge progress with diseases like polio, where we are at the brink of eradicating it. So I think it can be done, yes.
Well, we're going to continue to follow what's taking place with measles, and of course, checking in with you at the Warrren Alpert Medical School at Brown University. Dr. Ian Michelow, I appreciate your taking the time to come on today, sharing with folks what you know about measles and more, and thank you for watching. We'll be right back with our next guest here, Dr. Michael Fine, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.